Alright, top 5 decks for the kcgt. These are decks that I expect to do really well in this tournament to get a number of spots in the top cut when it's all said and done. We're going to start out with the deck that has been the best deck in Duel Links for the past month or two. It's DDD. This deck has taken plenty of spots in the top cuts in tournaments, and for good reason, right? This deck has a ton of good things going for it, not too many weaknesses. You have a great skill that gives you easy access to your pendulum scales as a pen deck. You have a lot of consistency here with multiple searchers. You have a lot of powerful, a lot of ways to summon powerful monsters, get them onto the board very fast. Access to a great and versatile rank 8 XYZ engine that gives them a ton of power and a ton of push, some great fusion monsters. This deck has so many things going for it. It's going to take plenty of spots here in the top cut. I'm pretty sure it has been doing really well, and I expect that to continue through this tournament. I guess a lot of the big questions are going to be what's going to happen to it afterwards, right? Are we going to see any banlist hits to this deck? Is it too new or not? I'm not too sure, but nonetheless, this deck is going to continue to do well, though, leading up through the event, especially now that we have the Galaxy Eyes engine that this deck has access to. Again, this deck can go into any rank or generic rank 8 support, and now they can go into the Cypher Dragon, rank up to that Galaxy Eyes monster, pop a face-up card on the field, rank up again, pop another card on the board. So now they just have a very easy way to destroy 2 cards on the field, and then have a monster that floats into a 3,000 attack point monster. So tons of power with this deck. I expect it to do really well in this tournament, and it forced dominance to continue until something is done with a ban list. Alright, next up we have Odd Eyes. This deck has been doing really well in tournaments as well. This deck has been, it's got a very similar skill to the DDD deck, where you can very easily put skills up on the board. It seems like if you're a Pendulum deck and you want to be Pendulum summoning, that you need a skill that's going to help you get your scales, to help, nullify that card advantage, or get you skills that are actually going to, give you a positive effect the way that the DDD scales do. So this deck does have a lot of good things going for it. You also have that consistency here, right? You have the Searcher with the Squawkle Bat, as well as the Spiral Strike. So you have your searching cards here. You have room for those extra tech cards like MST, Book of Moon, Treacherous Trap Hole in here, same way that DDD has access to Econ and stuff. But you have a little bit different versatility in your extra deck. You have access to the rank 4 engine, so you can use things like Abyss Dweller and Steel Swarm Roach, as well as the rank 7 engine, so you have access to that Dragon Monster that pops cards during your opponent's turn. That can be very difficult to deal with, so a lot of really cool things going for this deck as well. I said Odd Eyes has been one of those decks that's been doing great in tournaments for the last few months, and we'll expect to see it do so here in the KC Cup. It also does a little bit better, I think, in best of 1 formats than it does in best of 3 format by a bit. But again, I think it's just been one of those decks that's been doing really well the past month or so. It's been taking as many spots as DDD has in tournaments, and I expect that to continue here in the KCGT, that it'll be one of the top few performing decks. Next up we have Burning Abyss. This deck has been doing phenomenal ever since it's got its most recent support in Beatrice. Now we see where this deck just is really roaming, not quite a full power that TCG had, but this deck is really starting to perform well and show that it's moving into that top meta, really close to where DDD and Odd Eyes are. Maybe it'll turn out to surpass them here in this KCGT. The deck does really well now that we have Tour Guide also available here with the deck, and with so many tools now with Beatrice being able to send Farfa and Alec to disrupt your opponent during their turn. A lot of players are even just completely cutting the traps from the deck and just running anti-back row cards, MST, Forbidden Lance, Galaxy Cyclone, which you can then use if you mill it off the top of your deck. And people are just using those cards to just protect their plays and just go full strong into summoning as many BA monsters as they can, just loading the board with tons of monsters that float and give them more advantage, making sure they're protected from their opponent's back row, because again, Beatrice is now so powerful and gives the deck so many more move options and a way to deal with your opponent's cards that you just didn't have before. So this deck has been doing really well over the past week or so since the support came out. I expect it will do really well here in the KCGT. It's also a fan favorite. A lot of players love this deck from the TCG from back in the day, and even still now, this card or decks cards from this deck are still being used in the TCG, like in PK decks, right? So yeah, definitely expect to see Burning Abyss used throughout this event, and for it to do really well and have numerous spots taken throughout the top cut. Next up we have Gandora, a deck that's been doing really well for the past couple months, but maybe been falling off a little bit recently with so many other new decks getting new support like the Burning Abyss deck and Galaxy and other things like that. But nonetheless, though, I think Gandora does really well in a best of 1 format like the KCGT is, instead of having a side deck in a best of 3 format. So I expect that this deck will do better here in the KCGT, maybe than it has been doing in tournaments with the side deck the last few weeks or so. it still has its sort of big placement for you big old banish the board play with Gandora. People have been moving away from the Legionnaire version for a while now. Ancient Gear has been the way to go instead of Thunder Dragon. It just gives you so much access to your XYZ monsters and so much consistency in getting them, and so much card advantage. Whenever you can just summon the little Ancient Gear monster, search for box, search another card out of your deck, giving yourself a future play for the next turn. It's just really powerful for Gandora. And again, without a side deck, people don't have the opportunity to side in to hate for this deck. I think it makes it a real serious contender here for the kcgt. It's going to make it one of the more popular decks, and we see people also experimenting more and more with it too, right? Now that we've seen a lot of people recently just going with Forbidden Lands, but here we see a version of the deck that has MST, Book of Moon, and Pulse Mines in it, which can be great for stalling your opponent out in order to be able to survive and get to those Gandora plays, instead of going with hand traps like we usually see with this deck. So people are going with different options here. Some people running Legionnaire, some people not. I'm sure you'll see different versions of this deck hitting in the top cut, but they all do the most same basic thing, right? Their skill forces them to run so many gadget cards and obviously the Gandora monsters, but nonetheless, so I'm sure we'll see plenty of Gandora, or at least a few copies of the deck here in the top cut, because again, I think it's going to do really well here in the best of one format. And last but not least, metalfoes. I'm sure that there's going to be some other deck that's going to deserve to take one of these spots that we're going to miss here, but nonetheless, so metalfoes is the one deck last time that was sort of the surprise deck that did really well here in the KC Cup. Metalfoes took a ton of top spots. A ton of people were not really expecting this deck. Really, very few people were expecting this deck to do really well. I think it took a lot of people by surprise, but it's another one of those decks that does really good in a best of one format when people don't have the opportunity to side deck into extra copies of hate for this deck, whether it's MSCs and whatnot, to take out the fusion spells before they get the chance to go off. Players just aren't going to have the opportunity to decide to get into those cards. So with that, metalfoes, just like I did in the last kcgt, I think we'll have some success. I don't think it'll be quite as good as it was last time. Again, given that people, I think, are going to be more prepared for it this time around than they were last time. They're going to be expecting it more. Nonetheless, I do expect that metalfoes will do fairly well, though. We'll take a few spots here in the top 100, because it is one of those decks that I think does perform well and people just don't have a chance to side deck for it. But again, yeah, it's still a powerful deck. You still have some pretty good consistency. Very easy to be able to search out for your fusion spells and be able to get to them. So yeah, I expect this deck to do pretty well going into the KCGT. Into nab a few of those spots. But again, I'm sure I'm going to end up missing a deck just like last time where no one was expecting metalfoes to do really well. I'm sure there's some other deck out there, whether it's PK Fire or something like some deck that no one's considering right now, no one's thinking about, Vendred or some random thing, Evil Eye or something that is going to do really, really well, is going to take a ton of spots in the top cut, and no one's thinking about it right now. I think that that happens a lot, and that's part of what makes the good players, ones who are able to figure out the meta game and come up with counter solutions to it that no one else is thinking, and who are thinking one step ahead of time. So I'm sure that I'm going to be totally wrong about this, and there's going to be one or two other decks that are going to take these spots, and all these decks are going to do terrible. But nonetheless, though, this is my pick for what I think the top 5 decks are in the format right now. I think they're going to be the top 5 decks of the KCGT. I'm going to be doing the top 5 rogue decks as well as the top 5 budget decks too of the format and for the KCGT coming up. So definitely subscribe and like the video and be looking forward to those videos come out. And thank you so much for doing so. I really do appreciate the support, and you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.